Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome back to Drumlin Diner. So, we're just down the hill today, and we're going to work on a little place for Wolfgang and Simone to take shelter. We've got Trudy's place up on the hill there. As I mentioned last time, I figured, given the tension between them, sort of made sense to have them a little outside the walls. They're not really quite so community-minded. So, I wanted to use this awning here, but it's rather challenging to get into place. It can just about be rug glitched, but it's a bit of a nightmare. So, I've decided to use place anywhere for it. It's by far and away the easiest option. So I'm using Quapper here. This stick here is the Quapper place anywhere post, which we just put on there until we make sure it selects the awning. Just move it away until the post sort of becomes transparent, and then we can position anywhere. So it's dead easy to use. It's much simpler than the old swapper was. And it's worked fairly well. The one thing that I did have as a bit of an issue with it was that it tended to select the nearest object, which it took quite a bit of effort to make it recognise the awning as being that nearest object. It kept wanting to select the concrete pillar or the wall on the settlement, which is miles away effectively. But we got it going, so we'll just detach it now. And we'll take a look, see how we feel. Selecting nothing there. So that's a little bit on the low side. There's not much room to manoeuvre under here. It's limiting the space a bit too much. So we'll... I was going to try and get it going from here, but again, it just immediately wants to select the wall up there, and that's of no use to us. See what I mean? So we'll basically repeat. Move the thing away, select it over by the water, and then reposition it, and we'll try and push it up a little bit higher this time. Unfortunately, I can't see the bottom of the legs, but it turns out we're okay anyway. There we go. One awning right up against the cliff edge there, for want of a better way of putting it. So this is going to be a relatively rudimentary shelter. Can't imagine Wolfgang and Simone are exactly big on building things. It'll be sort of disguised and designed not to attract too much attention as well as keep the weather off them. So we're going to put a few sort of half walls. These are actually under the main wall tab, so sort of 2/3 size, I suppose. I have absolutely no idea where these have come from. They're quite cool, very handy. So this is slightly jumping around a little bit here, but as you can see, corners don't have any support on them for these awnings, so you can use these shorter radar poles and just position those in to look like they're supporting it. There we go. Depending on the angle you're at, sometimes they don't look like they're quite placed right, but it is what it is. We are improvising after all. So no fancy tricks needed, these just went in absolutely fine. Surprisingly, the sort of surface of the rocks got more or less ignored by the posts, so if you look at them from down here, you see they're all about the same height, which is quite cool. It makes the thing look a lot tidier. I was worried they were going to stick up a lot, but they don't. So there we go, we have a supported shelter now. Get a few more walls in there, look a little bit more permanent. Just a case of group select, position it in, make sure it's the right height. Try and line it up between the post there on the right and the leg of the awning there. So we'll look along the length, it's much easier to see what we're doing there. There we go. Plenty of holes, very rough and ready, but that is what we're going for. It should fill the gap quite nicely. These angled pieces are particularly useful for this build. There's quite a lot of angled tents and roofs and stuff, so these sit quite nicely along the edges there. Well, as close as you're going to get anyway, so I was quite happy about that. I'll stop it flying around with the controller. There we go. Taking a ramshackle to a bit of an extreme, but it works. I like this one. So drop this one in, no additional help required, but I'm not quite happy with the angles on it. A little bit too... It doesn't fit neatly enough together, I think. And doesn't quite follow the lines to the awning as well as I'd like, so We'll do this one again. There's a little bit of clipping with the rock face there, but I figure the stuff that's out of sight's just been cut off and it's just sort of resting up against it more than anything. There we go, that's a little bit better. So now we'll drop this piece in as well. And there we go. We've sort of got an entranceway as well. So there's a couple of pieces I've put in that I've not done on camera. There's another half wall that we're going to use as a doorway that you can't quite see from here. And you see there, I've closed off the end of it as well, which is just a case of half wall and a shack railing, group selected together and then moved into place together. But as Wolfgang produces and sells chems, he'll need somewhere to work. So that's what this will become. This is just another one of the raider tents. The only square one. I'm not overjoyed about the skulls on the top of it, but I wanted to use a square one rather than one of the triangular ones. I'm actually planning on taking out the chemistry station I've got in the main settlement, as it's not really sort of tacked on, and having one down here will do the job just fine. This particular workbench is from the makeshift furniture pack, which you can find on my mods list in the description. And it doesn't actually work, it's just decorative, so you need to use one of the rugs that also come with that mod, place it down in front of it and activate that so it looks like the animation is working at the bench instead. You'll see that in a moment. For now, we're just going to put these pieces in the side. For the most part, in fact, I don't think I needed to use any group select or anything to get this tent to go in. It just cooperated, which is good. And I can push it far enough back that it's right up against the rock face there. And I can adjust it reasonably easy as well. Easily, even. So there we go. Push it over a little bit to the left. It's much easier than trying to adjust the workbench underneath, as I'd have to group select that again and start from scratch. There we go. So that side closed off nice and simple. Going to mix things up a little bit. We use some chain link fence on the other side. Should about do the job, I think. Yep, looks promising. So drop it down over by the water. Concrete pillar. Make sure I can see what I'm doing. So one thing with these chain link fences, with the perspective and depth perception in this game, it can be kind of hard to see exactly where you're placing things until you're either too close to it or in the middle of the thing. Just going to drop this railing in, which is sort of under the half wall section, just to give it a little bit more texture, make it seem a little sturdier. Bit of a tight squeeze down there, but it works. Eventually. There we go, we have a flicker. That's what we needed. There we go. So next thing, we're going to put a pallet in with the workbench rug on it, so that we can actually use the chemistry station. I could have just put it straight on the grass, but it would probably have ended up floating, and group selecting on its own is a bit awkward. And that would have also made it very difficult to find and activate when I actually come back to use it at some point. So this is also going to be sort of a main player home and base for this character. Just going to group select the whole lot together, drop it in like that. Now this is actually a little bit too high. I don't know if you can tell from the sort of jitteriness of the movement there, but the character's head's hitting the awning there as they step onto the pallet. So we're going to pull it out and do it again, drop it a little bit lower down. Unfortunately, without sinking it completely into the ground, that's still not going to be low enough. So once we've got it in place, it's only ever so slightly lower, but there we go. We'll nudge that up a little bit, still reasonably snug with the edge of the rock face there. Now we've got some headroom. So obviously Wolfgang's not going to want anybody just wandering in and helping themselves to his supplies. So we'll use an auto-closing chain link gate here. Just check I've got it the right way around there. And we'll group select that in on the front. Figure it's something you can actually lock. I have to assume there's a padlock on there or something. Not fantastically secure, but as good as you get in the wasteland. Well, it's getting a little dark now, but we're nearly there. So one last thing, I wanted to close off this edge a little bit, as it's a little untidy. Though, I did just group select this in, so I want to use a slightly differently textured piece here. But it ends up on a bit of an angle, as you'll see in just a moment, so I wasn't overly happy. I actually ended up coming back and dropping it on a rug and just rug glitching it in there, so it's nice and flat. But you get the general idea here, and it looks pretty good on the whole. So, with some decoration to be done that I got slightly carried away on, we'll move on to the tour. So there we go. Not really in as defences, all these decorations, and there are bits of junk wall and stuff in here, but it's more as, obviously the turrets are defences. It's more to sort of distract people and make them think, oh, it's just a junk heap. Oh yeah. They've probably got the nicest view out of everybody down here. We have our little shack and shelter. You see that sort of curved piece there that I'm figuring is the door. They just sort of drag it round when they want to close the place off. Very, very rudimentary in here. A couple of sleeping bags. Chest down there for storage. A couple of lanterns. Spin round, we've got a very improvised table there. That's literally it for their little shelter here. As I say, they're not the big on building type, so everything's very, very basic. Another turret around there if they need the protection. More junk walls on the right there just to disguise it as a bit more of a junk pile. We'll take a look at his little chem station. There's a fridge on the right there to store his finished product in, and everything he needs to make it. And there we go. So I do hope you enjoyed. If you did like the video, you know what to do by now. If you'd like to support the channel more directly, please consider becoming a sponsor on YouTube Gaming. All the information for that, if you're interested, is down in the description. I will be speaking to you all very, very soon. Thank you very much.